In this episode of Dirt Cheap Daily, I'll give you a quick look at how I modded my fender. This won't be a comprehensive DIY, it's just to give you a good idea about the process I went through to wrap my fender in fabric. Hopefully, this will give you ideas of ways you can modify your car. What I'm not showing are the hours it took me to unpick all the seams in the sport coats, lay out the different fabrics, and sew them all together. Once I got that finished, I sanded down the fender with 220 grit just to rough it up so that the fiberglass would adhere. Then I wiped off the dust with water and then with a dry paper towel. I was really thorough drying it off so my fiberglass wouldn't have any issues. Just to give it a little extra time to dry on its own, I saved this step until now. I'm cutting off the excess fabric on the back sides of each seam. The fabric had a lot of lumps in it and laid uneven because of the excess fabric. I decided to orient the fabric using rivets, so I drilled holes in a few places along the edge of the fender. Then I draped the fabric over and cut holes for the rivets. There was some slack in the fabric, so I drilled a few more holes and placed rivets to stretch it all out. Once I was happy with how it was laying, I mixed up some fiberglass and started applying it to the fender. When I work with fiberglass, I like using styrofoam or paper bowls to mix in, and barbecue skewers to mix with. These items are pretty cheap and come in relatively large packs. Since you throw it all away when you're finished, I found this system to work pretty well. Since I wanted the fabric to stick to the fender, I started by applying the resin under the fabric. I'm just using a plastic spoon to spread the resin. I was worried about the resin setting up before I could lay it out, so I pulled the whole piece of fabric up and smeared resin over the rest of the fender. Then I put the fabric back over the top, locating it with the rivets, and I popped all the rivets in, attaching the fabric permanently to the fender. With it riveted together, I decided to mix up one more batch of resin before it got too dark, and spread it over the top of the fabric, saturating the fabric completely. The next morning, it was dry and cured, so I sanded the fender down before applying another coat. There were a few places that didn't get completely saturated, and in general, the whole surface was really rough. My goal by sanding was to even out the surface before applying another coat of resin, and then the resin would fill in the low spots and create an even surface. I also cut off the excess fabric around the edges of the fender and used resin to stick the edges down. Next, I spread a fairly thick coat of resin over the rest of the fender and let it dry. Thanks for watching. I hope you started having ideas of things you could do to your own car. Fiberglass can be pretty messy, but it's a really good material to work with that can be shaped and sanded easily by hand. I'll show you the finishing steps and mounting of the fender in a future episode, so be sure to subscribe to see how it turns out. In the meantime, check out my Instagram and some of my other videos.